There's a game called Bloodless. It's a demo out on Steam Next Fest. I'm getting paid to show you this, but as you know, I'm not going to show you anything that's crap. Or if I do, I ain't going to. Well, maybe I'd take their money as long as they're cool with it. Here's what I told them. I talked to them on this service called Lurk It. I says, yeah, I'll play your demo. You can count. Here's what I wrote. You can count on an honest response, as well as suggestions about stuff I hope the game will get before official launch. Not everybody's looking for that. I appreciate it. Regardless, I'm looking forward to playing it. And I am, actually. Before I even knew about this opportunity that came my way, which I appreciate, Bloodless was on my radar because I didn't really understand what it was. They kept talking about it in some of the trailers as being this bloodless, killless, pacifist action game to some extent. And I was like, what is that? What does that mean? And so it actually piqued my interest, and in a biblical way. Somebody told me what that means the other day, biblical way. I used to think it doesn't matter. The point is, Bloodless. I like it. I think it's very interesting. I think it's fun. The high concept is you play this character who comes back home to their village, their Japanese village, ancient Japan. They have become a ronin. They were a samurai. They were this vicious, bloody, awful, incredibly effective, but not a good guy who was killing lots of folks in the name of their master, however samurai code works, I don't know. And they have, in their travels, they've rejected that. And they come back home and they're like, holy shit, it's awful here now. Overrun with bandits and bad guys. But this Ronin is like, okay, I'm going to protect my village, but I'm not going to hurt anybody. I'm not going to spill any blood. And so it's this really interesting challenge for the character to survive and thrive and protect this village and win back this village with this new code of honor that they are now holding themselves to. Now, I say his. I think it's a woman. Might be a lady. I think it's a lady, actually. But the art, you can't tell with the art style. The art style is very, very cool. It reminds me of like Commodore 64 games and Apple II games. It's a good approximation of those kind of games, but obviously with modern day quality of life improvements, visual improvements. But the art style is such that I can't really tell if it's a long-haired male samurai or not, but I think it's a lady. Anyway, point being, she comes home and she's like, look, y'all can try to spill my blood, but, you know, it's a touching little story. It's only the demo. And you guys know me. I mean, there's no cutscenes, thanks God. There's no cutscenes, thank God, because I don't like that. But I do like how they tell their story and that it's just, you know, little word bubbles and whatnot. And it's good. It's interesting. It's actually surprisingly poignant. And I think it's because you've got this sort of idea sitting on top where she's like, I'm not going to kill anybody. And on the occasion where she kind of does, or someone dies and maybe she thinks she could have prevented it, I'm not going to blow sunshine up its butt, but it's not like, oh, I'm crying. But it was a little moving there. You felt for the little Ronin there. It's like, hey, man, I'm sorry you were trying to make that work and it didn't. I do like it. And let me give you the structure real quick. I want to get into the details of this game. The real high concept of this game, or the real juice of this game, is its combat. But it's not like a lot of games, and I'm not going to mention their names, but there's a lot of games in the last couple years where they're really into their combat system, and it's basically one room after another, with each room just having a unique combat scenario. And that's not this. What I really dig about this is the combat is cool. I'll talk about it in a second, but it's in more of a NES Zelda 1 style game, right? I don't want to, again, I'm not saying it's like, you know, Link to the Past or Link Between Worlds, but if you go back to the original Zelda, you know, there's an open world map, there are characters to encounter, there are things to explore. It feels like an adventure versus just going combat scenario. And I really like that, especially given that the story and the narrative is pretty interesting. It's pretty compelling so far. So I dig that. But on top of that, the combat is really, really cool and interesting. You don't just run in hack and slashing the bad guys. You'll get killed very, very quickly. It is very much, I believe, designed, and if it's not, it does it anyway, to make you feel like one of those sort of Tai Chi. I don't know these names and things, but Tai Chi's the one where you use your opponent's energy against them, right? So it's a very passive kind of like you see in a lot of these martial arts films where the bad guys are rushing at the main character, and the character's just like sort of stepping to the side and just doing these little, little touches to the chest and all kinds of things, and they totally decimate the bad guys, but it comes from more of a place of peace and calm and whatnot. And what I do think is really cool about this is, in order to play this game well, I think, you guys know I'm not the world's best game player, but and there's only one difficulty, at least in the demo, so I don't know how hard and stuff, but we'll talk about that in a second. But in order to play this well and to really get into it, you do have to kind of enter this sort of Zen trance state. Camera's top down-ish. You're fighting multiple enemies at once, so it's not that these encounters are, Souls-like, with tons of patterns to memorize and all that. Most enemies have one or two things they do. But because you're surrounded by multiple enemies and because you have the camera pulled back so you can track all of it, you really need to fall into this sort of Zen-like, just being above the battle and almost just sort of experiencing it in a very... I was going to say I don't want to romanticize it, but it is kind of romantic actually when you think about it. You've got to kind of distance yourself from what's actually happening at a conceptual level and just become that flow. And what's neat about it is when the enemies are about to attack, they'll flash white, or there'll be a little white effect, unless it's red where you can't defend it. Otherwise, if you go up to these guys and just start attacking, you can't do anything, right? So it really becomes this sort of, at an abstract level, this flow of looking for the white, avoiding the red, positioning yourself so that when the white occurs, you're close enough that you can kind of rush in and do your attacks. And then there's like sort of stamina break attacks where you can kind of, bring their bars down enough so your normal attacks will actually work, right? So it's unique in that your initial sense is to rush in and attack based on what you've learned. But the way to win is to be much more observant and look for those openings and look for those moments. Otherwise, you're dead. And on one hand, you could argue that the game talks about being bloodless and talks about being, I'm not going to spill blood and take people's lives. But fundamentally, you're not doing anything different, right? It's like the stamina break things, which are like from flower petals, could be a flame attack, or the Russian attack where they go in and disable the enemy. It could be, a bloody Devil May Cry move, but it's just that they've presented it narratively and visually in a way that says, oh, it's a pacifist character. But actually, what's interesting about it is, and there's truth to that. I mean, I don't want to oversell it, but what's interesting about it is you have this kind of sense that you have to do what's not instinctual. And in that's where the fun is and the uniqueness is, right? Because most games that look like this, that play like this, in terms of base controls, you'd say, let me just run in and start kicking or swinging or whatever it is. In this game, you really have to, observe and become aware of your instincts and distance yourself from them or decouple yourself from them and say, for me to do well here, I really have to be present in what's happening on the screen and what I need to do based on these visual cues and not based on what most people instinctually would do if you just gave them a controller and said, kill that guy. You just run up and start pounding the buttons. So there really is an interesting blend of sort of thematic and mechanic. It doesn't always work, but it kind of always, I don't know what to say. It's like on one level, at a high level, it's always working. And that's some of the appeal of this game, quite a bit of the appeal of this game. On another level, I don't want to oversell it because, like I said, you could change out all the effects and the narrative and suddenly you've got Dante or Samanosuke from Onimusha or whatever, and they're just, or Jinskai if you're, under the age of 30, and you're just tearing shit up. So, but it's very enjoyable. It's very, very cool. Okay, so Zelda, old school Zelda structure with this kind of combat. That's kind of the high concept with this Ronin story, right? So I am interested in this game. I was interested before these guys reached out and said, hey, you want some money to talk about it? And after having played it a couple of times, I'm still interested. There's things I don't know, though, right? I don't know how deep it is, how long it is. Like, I like very much the fact that there are items you can collect. There are these kind of abilities that you can collect and choose, kind of slot in. I think they call them badges or, I don't know, crest or something. But it's like one of them in the demo is the character gets health by drinking tea. And you can speed up because you're going to have to drink it during fights, you know. And one of the crest, if you say, I found that one, I unlocked that one, I want to activate that one. I can activate 3 at a time or whatever. I think it's 3. She'll drink the tea faster, right? So there's a bunch of those little crests to unlock. There's a skill tree that doesn't look very robust, but I don't know if that's just for the demo. I was only able to unlock one of the skills before the demo ended, and I've played it twice, and I haven't been able to do any more than that. So I don't know how deep or long that's going to be. I look at this map and I really think it's cool, but I don't know, are there 10 of these? Is there one set in the snowy mountains? Is there one set in a cavern? Or is this pretty much the extent of it? Nothing would be wrong with this being the extent of it, all the stuff you just saw. The issue is, I don't know what they're charging for it. I don't know how long it's supposed to be. So, you know, I can't really say, you should buy this game. But I definitely think you should keep an eye on it, play the demo. It's pretty cool. What's the next step? Frankly, watch somebody play it when it comes out, read some reviews, see what they're charging for it, because that's going to tell a lot, see how long it is. But what I can tell you is the demo leaves a very, very good impression. And I had kind of hoped at the end there would be some kind of trailer or something like showing, hey, here's what you can get when the game launches late August. I think it's August 29th, but we don't have that yet. I'm sure that's coming. Here's some stuff I would change or that I'm not vibing with in the game or that I hope adjusts. Like I said earlier, you've got to be so tuned into what's happening on the screen with these enemies, how they move, when they're attacking, when your window is, that you really don't want to take your eye away from the screen. But stamina is such a key component in this game, because if you don't have stamina, you can't go fast. Maybe there's some attacks you can't do. But in order to see where your stamina is, you've got to look to the upper left of the screen. And that's fine. I'm not saying get rid of that. But there needs to either be at the least some kind of audio cue of when you're running out, when you're using it, when it's filled back up, when it is in the process of filling back up, just to give you some awareness without having to take your eye off that moment-to-moment battle. And that would be at the least. I would prefer if they did something visually. I know you don't want to just clutter up the main character with meters, you know, underneath her, like a half circle that fill, you know, but at least it would be where you're looking. Maybe because the art's so simple, you could have some kind of color on the character that kind of fills in the character when she's got full stamina, and when she's using it up, the color drains from her or something. Just something that lets me stay focused on what I'm trying to focus on, which is the combat, and not have to keep doing this. Because I know you're like, well, Jaffe, it's just up there. It is, but this is the kind of game, like I said, you get into that Zen state, and a glance up there is a glance that's occurring when that red attack is happening, or when the bad guy slams his club down the second time, and when he does it the second time, the big stone comes from the sky. Well, you want to know that you have stamina to dodge from that, and you don't know that unless you look up there. By the time you look up there, you're too damn late. I think the main character blends in too much with the enemy characters. I love the minimal style. I love what this looks like, but there is a real problem when you've got 3 to 4 enemies on screen at once and you're all just kind of in this flurry of white art, you know, whether it's the art of the arc of the effects of the enemy blades, like you might be seeing there in the background, or it's the white garb of the characters. It just becomes, you know, it's like I really wish my character stood out amongst the other characters. Similarly, there are parts of the environment that are just background, and there are parts of the environment that literally stop you from moving. So when you're trying to position yourself, which is a key part of this game, and you suddenly get stuck, you're like, what the fuck? And it's like, oh, I'm running up against this little wooden stump in the forest. And I'm like, that has collision, but this other thing doesn't, you know? So I think there needs to be a little bit more visual clarity. I understand it comes at the expense of maybe a style, but frankly, Steam is littered and the industry's littered with games that have an amazing style, but because they don't play as good as they should, nobody cares after people get over the style. And so hopefully gameplay will trump visual, fidelity to a throwback style, because it is interfering with the quality of the gameplay. Lastly, I'll say that there are some things that hurt you in the environment, like these big logs with spikes on them or fire pits or whatever. And that's cool, but it's only cool if I can also turn those on the enemies. Now, I haven't experienced many of the enemies in the game. I'd like to think that, a game like this, there's going to be like 20 enemy types or a number of enemy types that do interesting things that cause me to position and read the enemy well. And when you put two of them together, you got to totally change your strategy. I don't know how many enemy types the game will have. So far, I have been unable to sort of lead these bad guys into these same traps. Like I assumed, this log, I can, stand here and dodge out of the way, and that'll cause the bad guy to slam into it. And maybe that's possible, but I haven't been able to pull it off in the demos. So if it turns out those are not part of the gameplay where the player and the enemy can get hurt, it just feels kind of, it's kind of seems annoyingly frustrating. Oh, finally, the other thing that's frustrating, I hope they take a page out of Elden Ring when it comes to sprinting. I get and I love that sprinting is a limited resource that you have to track, again, hopefully with audio or visual cues improved, when you're in combat. But when you're just navigating the space, I could be wrong. Maybe things will happen down the road in the design that I haven't experienced yet. But so far, in the demo, it's kind of like, why am I having to sort of navigate and manage this fucking sprint meter when all I'm doing is trying to run from the tea house to the forest in the back of the tea house or whatever? That's pretty frustrating. That's a pretty simple fix. Hopefully, and again, maybe there's a reason for it that is good gameplay that I just haven't experienced yet because I haven't seen everything. But overall, though, most of those are simple fixes. I think games made in Unity, though, is getting more and more robust. I think. I don't know what they're doing on the team. Hell, maybe it's hard, but who knows? I don't care. The point is, I want it. Damn it. But Bloodless, man, it's good. It's good. The demo is out. You deserve to play the demo if you love good games, interesting games. Is it going to be worth your ducats when it comes out? How much is it? How long is it? How robust is it? If they were to say to me, this game is going to be pretty much what you see is what you get in terms of the map size and all that, and we're selling it for like $7, I would say, cool, excellent, I'm in. If they're going to sell it based on that scope for $20, I'd say, it's not enough. But so I can't tell you where that's going. But I can tell you that the demo is a lot of fun. Plays great. It's interesting. I dig the story. I dig the characters. I dig the vibe. It's bloodless. Don't bleed. I love you. Make a baby with me.